Begin this regular meeting of the Town Council, September 8, 2008, with a pledge of allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Miller, would you kindly call the roll, please?
Councilor Edwards?
Here.
Councilor Rudolph? Present. Councilor Medeiros?
Here.
Councilor Durfee?
Here.
Councilor Carroll?
Here.
Councilor Costa? And Councilor Bowman? All present.
And Mr. Bowman, would you read the consent agenda, please?
Tonight's consent agenda consists of the approval of council minutes presented on August 25th and continued to September 8th.
Yeah. No.
Eventually, we'll get to blaming you, Paul.
Approval of council minutes presented on August 25th and continued to September 8th. Council meeting August 12th, 2008. Executive session minutes August 12th, 2008. Emergency special council meeting August 6th, 2008. Councilor Costa abstained, not present at meeting. Emergency special council meeting August 4th, 2008. Council minutes minutes July 28, 2008. Councilor Carroll abstained, not present at meeting. Special council meeting minutes July 7th, 2008, recessed from 6:30:08. Special council meeting executive session minutes July 7th, 2008, and special council meeting minutes June 30th, 2008, recessed to 7/7/08. Approval of regular council meeting minutes August 25th, 2008. Approval of executive session minutes August 25th, 2008. Receipt of minutes from the following boards and commissions: Planning Board 4, Wastewater Management Commission, and Economic Development Commission 2. Correspondence received and filed: received from Office of Housing and Community Development, Affordable Housing Plan Progress Report, July 1st, 2007, June 30th, 2008. Approval of tax assessor abatements from the scheduled show cause hearing for Spar Island Enterprises Incorporated doing business as Little Bear Lounge on September 22nd, 2008, requested by State Fire Marshal's Office, Tiverton Fire, and Tiverton Code Enforcement for liquor license, particularly and tobacco license.
Are there any changes to the consent agenda?
Madam President, I request to remove minutes of August 25th, which is item 1A-B.
It is removed.
1B, I'm sorry, A1B.
A1B.
Madam President, CA item 5, the request for show cause hearing.
It is removed. Any other withdrawals from the consent agenda? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand, please. Motion carries. Mr. Carroll.
On the third page of the minutes, partway down the page, Personnel Board, just to let it show that I oppose that appointment, just to correct the minutes. And also under the Planning Board, the last sentence down that says, for the record, Councilor Carroll noted that he had previously voted not to reappoint Peter Carr in the first motion. That needs to be corrected. And that should point that Councilor Carroll was in the affirmative or with the majority.
We will correct it.
Thank you very much. The motion to add those minutes to the meeting.
Second.
That's correct.
Corrected. Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as corrected, would you kindly raise your right hand, please? Yes. And Mr. Hannibal Costa?
Yeah, we have a request for a show cause hearing. We have a request for a show cause hearing, and I'm wondering if it's ready for council action. I read in a couple of places that there are some actions that are still before a court of some sort. That plus let me see.
Chief up just a minute, but I'll...
That's fine, ma'am.
Go ahead and finish.
I have the page marked.
Mr. Costa, it'll be under the fire marshal, state fire marshal's report. Should be under sprinklers and fire alarm system.
Being addressed in Division 2 Court?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Did you find it?
Yes.
There's no page number.
There's two on them. It's item
Those two matters are
16.
still pending until we see
18.
what the result of those is. I would think would be necessary before we have a show cause hearing.
Madam, if I may,
Yeah.
Chief Lloyd, Tiverton Fire Department. The matter has been before the district court. The district court was asked, as they have in the past, to suspend their license at the time. District court ordered the state fire marshal and the Tiverton Fire Department to bring those matters back to the Board of Licensing, the Tiverton Town Council, because of the seriousness of the nature. This judge has decided to place that issue in your hands because of the seriousness of the violations that are pending. But it is still proceeding through the courts, but in the meantime, there was a request to remove their license, and the judge asked that the town council look at that.
Do we have a copy of that decision that reflects that point?
I don't have that with me. That's on the Attorney General's office, has that, sir.
My position remains that it's too early to have that show cause hearing.
Well,
I would make a motion that the matter be tabled until we receive for further information, especially that now pending before the court.
I think Chief has attempted to answer that if the court has sent it back to the town.
I have, Madam, and I would also just like to urge the council at this point in time, because the judge has sent it back, and I can understand Mr. Costa is looking for the written judgment from the judge. It was ordered in court that day. I will do my best to get you a copy of that, sir. But having said that, being brought back to the Board of Licensing with the violations, particularly through the building inspector's office and our office that are there, the onus and the liability of anything that occurs in that facility now rests with the town of Tiverton. I just caution you in that regard.
Is there a second to that motion? I hear none, Mr. Costa. So,
I make a motion that we approve this as part of the consent agenda.
is there a second to that motion?
I'll second. Just a question, are we scheduling for September 22nd? Is that?
All those in favor of that motion, raise your right hand, please. All those opposed to that motion?
Thank you.
Mr. Bowman,
Yes.
could you take over this Tiverton Land Trust request for me?
Yes.
And I'll be glad to change seats with you.
I don't think that's necessary. We have a public hearing before us this evening advertised for the Tiverton Land Trust request noise variance for Country Day at Cotton Gray on September 13th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Is there anyone wishing to be heard on this matter?
Yes, please.
I'm talking about from the public. You're representing the Land Trust.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that you wanted to hear the gist of the,
I think when we schedule a public hearing, we understand
I'm
that
sorry.
you're having your day there. This is for the public to comment.
Okay.
Before the council takes
Certainly.
action.
Thank you.
Is there anyone wishing to be heard on this request? If not, I'll close the public hearing and have the matter before the council.
In the absence of a whole bunch of arguments here, I would make a motion that the request for the variance be granted.
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes unanimously, noting that the president has recused herself in this matter.
Thank you.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Moving on. Next item, we have appointments and resignations, and we have two resignations from the planning board.
Madam President, I make a motion that we table items D1, D2, and D3.
Second.
Yeah.
I think you'd be better off for further future time.
I mean, I'll elaborate a little bit on why I second that, is that particularly how these play into, and not to get into the other issue of the reappointment or not reappointment, but in terms of the planner, I'm very concerned about the fact that the whole point of, or part of hiring the town planner was that we were going to have him serve in this position, and there are obviously some personal issues between Mr. Spencer and some members of the planning board per these documents that we've received. And this concerns me. I don't think, I mean, the council set a policy that this was going to be the role of the planner. We put the planner in that role, and I think to now have a situation where, for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out and he would not like to be in that position, I think that creates an issue whether there's a problem there to begin with in terms of the personal dynamics. I think something needs to, some type of mediation, something needs to be done to make that a workable situation, because it sounds right now like a pretty dysfunctional situation. And I don't think it's good to simply throw up our hands and say, well, let's just take that person out of that position. So I'm not in favor of removing Mr. Spencer from that position at this point. As far as the resignations of the other members, I think that a lot of this all plays into the same dynamics that are there. And I'd like to see some type of a discussion, some type of a mediation to try to resolve some of the issues that are out there where this may not be the proper forum for it.
If I may jump in, this has been going on since the town of Tiverton has hired a planner. Let's face it, Jesus Christ Almighty could come down from heaven and be in that position. And either you're in or you're out. Okay? And enough is enough. Okay? It is getting old. Either someone's going to be there or somebody's not going to be there. Either you like the guy or you don't like the guy. It's getting old, okay? And you know, and just because someone doesn't get reappointed to a board, and some people assume that person didn't get reappointed and go and submit their resignations, and then for this council to go and say, well, let's go and hold hands and sing Kumbaya, it's getting old.
Can I make
You
a
know,
suggestion?
and you know, and I know the emotions get involved and everything else, but you know, you have a board that needs to function, and it's getting old. You know, we went through this for months and months and months with a previous administrator trying to make that board work. You know, we now have another administrator, and what are we going to do? You're going to dump the same thing on that administrator. In a couple of months, you're going to have a new council coming, and you're going to start doing the same thing all over again. Enough is enough.
I would also just like to say that sometimes a quiet period is needed, and there's been a lot of heat generated. Some of it's been unfortunate, some of the public comments. But I support Mr. Edwards' motion, because I do think this is a time when people need to step back, see what the town's interest is, and then we can revisit this. But I do think there's a time to be quiet and calm, and then a time to speak out. So I will end up supporting the motion.
The problem I have with supporting this motion is that these resignations we received were effective immediately, leaving us with the planning board that's severely depleted to take time to try to figure out what's going on. Whatever we're going to do is leaving us in a position, I believe, we only have enough members on the planning board to constitute a quorum. People have plans before us that are going to start coming up. Time clocks are going to start running, and things are going to get through by virtue of us failing to take actions. This is not a matter that we can really, sit on and wait to do. I mean, we're either going to accept these resignations, make some appointments to the planning board so that they can have, the function, go ahead with the function that they were empowered to do, or we're going to be in trouble.
I did speak to Mr. Ruggiero about that. I didn't speak to Mr. Tights, and I apologize for that. But Mr. Ruggiero's advice was that until the council approved and accepted the resignation, that they were not effective. until we...
If I tell you I've resigned, effective
Effective
immediately,
immediately.
I'm probably not going to show up for meetings.
Well, that-
So, I mean,
And that may be the case, but what I'm saying is that if we can certainly look for new applicants on the board, but, and I'm not suggesting we can't, because this may end up, but we do need, I think, a little time. and a
To
little-
talk them to come back on. I thank you for your years of service, I truly appreciate that. But, you know, when individuals of a board go and quit and leave the remaining members of that board hanging there because they were not happy with an individual not being reappointed, who was appointed to fill a vacancy, you know, whether you like the appointments of a board or not. You know, there were individuals that served on the board well, and but to resign, you know, I'm sorry, you know, I accept their resignations, and I'm prepared to vote to accept their resignations tonight, should it come to that. Should it come to that.
Paul, that wasn't my intent when I made the motion. Actually, I mean, I was caught a little bit by surprise, but my intent here was, as Council President has acknowledged, their resignations don't become effective until we actually accept them. And counting on that, until we actually have some candidates and some people, I was counting on these people to fulfill their obligation, which they have done for so many years, and to continue to fulfill it until the town has had the opportunity to replace them.
I'm going to call for a motion. I mean, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor of that motion, raise your hand. All those opposed to that motion, raise your hand. 4, 2, 3.
Motion to accept the resignation of Noel Berg and Rosemary Eva.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed to that motion? Motion carries 4-3. Okay. Coming in.
Motion to continue the reappointment of the administrative officer to the planning board to the next meeting.
Second?
All those in favor of that motion, raise your right hand. All those opposed? It carries 5-2. Councilor Maderas.
Just the continuing item on the voter guide. I think Nancy has some information on the costs if we were to have something printed and mailed.
I'm sorry. I didn't get to, I realize we're going to the next, I'm sorry, to the next issue. Is it the council's wishes that I put something in the paper with a deadline to try to generate some candidates for these? I have had people come, and I have a few applicants, but
We
you want
have some
something
other,
in the
why don't you
paper
lump them all together?
and with everything, and then give it, okay.
All right. We are on Councilor Maderas on charter amendments, voter guide.
Again, just if Nancy, do you have the costs that you had looked into, just so we know what we're talking about in terms of what it would cost if we're going to try to print and mail things as has been done in the past?
Did we put that in the backup? I thought it was in the backup that I sent the email to everyone.
basically giving us a per piece,
Yeah.
was what it didn't give us. How
Right. What was-
many we sending?
Because we have to have them downsize the list, make sure it's only one household going out. This is, actually, Document Technology, this is where we send our tax bills from, so they have the roll, and they said they filter it through to make sure there's only one per household, and this, that, and the other. But it is going to be costly if we go that way. Also, I have a printer giving us cost for just printing them and leaving them in places around town in the hopes that people will pick them up.
Do we have an approximate cost of the printing and mailing according to this?
Well, I would hope it wouldn't go over 2,500.
Well, I mean, the question then is whether that's something where we would get the 2,500 from, if anyone, if the administrator, or if there's anything that's in any of the election-related accounts that we might be able to utilize for this. Whether it's been standard practice before, whether we continue to do it, that's something for the council to decide. The other question is again, who's going to put it together? I don't know if we ever finalize that, or whether you're just going to take the information that was provided at the public hearing and use that.
Probably, I'll try to put something. I don't have $2,500, but I'm sure Mr. Donslow will.
Well, if we have to use it. I mean, obviously, we have a town council contingency
I have no
fund for
idea
it.
how many individual ones will go out. We're just working on the road.
I think the important thing is to get something sort of rolling. And I know that you very kindly suggested that you would do the financial.
Now, I talked to Nancy, certainly the two that I proposed, I'll put that information together. The other ones, I think, are pretty much in the form they need to be. I think Nancy can take that from what was provided for the public hearing. And the idea would be hopefully to have this for the next meeting for the council to approve, and then we can decide at that point, based on this cost, whether we want to go forward with printing X number of copies.
Have we figured out whether it'll be a 6 or a 4-page report?
Well, that's what,
I mean,
we'll know that for the next meeting.
Yeah, and then again, the number of households by paring the list down, because, we're getting figures. I think I'd like to see a hardball figure to know what the document's going to be and how many houses it's going to, so we get that figure, instead of just saying it's about $2,500. And the same way, they're saying here that it's, the postage in standard classes is .257, so it's 26 cents a. I'm not sure if we can get that same rate if we sent it out, in other words, if we had printed doing this, because we're still waiting, I guess, for a price on the print.
They're not gonna do the mailing.
No, okay, what I'm saying,
Would it be
I've
less
checked
expensive?
newspaper, they don't do ultimate mailing anymore. I've checked around. For the time I have, this is.
Would it be less expensive and less trouble to advertise it a week before the election and say, here is the whole story?
I haven't checked putting it like a page in the Times. I could do that. I hadn't even thought of that one.
So maybe you could look at it as an insert into the Secana Times.
Like,
Try.
Those single tiny spaces, though, I think it's got to be, and to give everything their due, I think there's got to be a brochure like this, so that people can sit back. We get one of those ads in the Secana Times, and
It wouldn't be an ad, it would be an insert.
magnifying
You could just
glass.
take the booklet and insert it into the
Like those
Times.
directory ones that are.
Yeah, much like we just got the.
I haven't thought of it, but I'll check on the price. That's
Okay.
I can. I did. I went to Frank and I went to the Newport Daily News and I went
Okay,
to.
Nancy, for the next meeting, we'll have a firm price.
I'll try to have a firm price and present.
You're good.
And we'll have the information for the next meeting, so we know whether we can get it onto 4 pages, hopefully.
motion to continue.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand, please. Motion carried. Next item, Town Administrator. This is a matter that was continued from our August 25th meeting.
Yes, Madam President, and we do have some additional information for you. We're looking for a volunteer to stand up.
Don Dolan.
I have to pick you, Don.
Mike said he hasn't.
Madam President, members of the council, last week, before August 25th, we brought for you my request for tasers. Today I brought the senior representative from Tasers International, Jay Keel. I figured he would be more apt to answer any questions you may have, technological questions. Mr. Bowman had some questions. Who in Rhode Island had who was insured by the trust? So I did a little bit of research in that area. And I also happened to find a newspaper clipping, Herald News on Friday night, I think you should, so I did some reading.
Like he answered, we asked that one for the residents.
Sorry, Madam.
Thank you.
Okay. Another question that was asked of me of how many officers had been injured on duty. Over the last 5 years, we've had 5 officers injured on duty, 2 with broken thumbs, 1 with a broken knee, 1 with a broken ankle, and 1 with a broken hand. They each were out for about approximately 1 month injured on duty, and we had to pay to replace those people as well.
Chief, those injuries were all related to direct
Physical contact,
contact with a suspect?
yes.
I just asked the question, I did a little bit of research, as I promised you I would at the last council meeting, and I intend to vote for tasers. I'm not, my one question is, do we need 30 of them? Are you representing the taser company?
Yes, sir.
Is that price of $1,000 a piece ever gonna come down?
I don't believe so at this time. They've been the same price for approximately about 5 years now.
Is 30 the number that we really need, or?
I gave you what I thought was an honest number, and I didn't want to have to keep coming back to the council. What I am planning on doing is training the individuals from the drug money. There'll be no cost to the town, out of the town's coffers.
One of the things that happens when they're individually issued also is that the devices themselves end up lasting much longer, because when the device is individually issued, the officers take much better care of it. And for an accountability purposes, as far as who is shooting what, as far as keeping track of everything going on, issuing it per officer at the patrol level is really the recommended procedure.
They needed maintenance, if they require maintenance. And I agree with you that, in order for each policeman to take care of it, he needs to own it.
I do plan on implementing it first, just to get them on the road, get everyone trained, buy probably a third of them at one time, and then slowly start filling the rest of the department, staffing the rest of the, equipping the rest of the staff.
Chief,
Yes, ma'am.
if we voted last week, I probably would have voted with it, to support it. But I do have concerns, and they grew.
Okay.
And they grew really because of the list of where the tasers should not be used.
Okay.
Persons in control of a vehicle, persons in wheelchair. That's obvious. You're in a wheelchair. Pregnant women, people with heart problems. My concern is that in a heat of
Battle.
you're not going to say, "Are you pregnant, by the way?" Or do you have no heart problem? I mean, those kind of things where I think if they are used, you're going to go in, and if somebody needs to be subdued, you're going to use that taser gun. And if it's used in this situation where I don't think people are going to stop and say, "I can't shoot you if you have a heart problem." And that part concerns me, because if that happens, the town will be sued.
I understand that. I did call Taser in Arizona, and they actually have run tests. Mr. Keel would probably be more equipped in that area, but we're not intentionally going to, and if someone is pregnant, obviously, if they're out of the first trimester, there's a possibility that we're able to see that.
I know that.
I understand what you're saying, but if it ever came to the fact where you had a choice to use lethal force over non-lethal force, this is your choices, so to speak, in the heat of battle.
See, that, I haven't kind of gotten over that.
Okay,
And that's,
if I could address that. As far as medically,
honestly, I'd rather have it addressed by another police chief from one of these, because you're selling the product.
I'm a lieutenant in the police department also,
In what police department?
in Connecticut.
In Connecticut.
Yes. And I teach at the Connecticut Police Academy also use of force, non-lethal issues.
That makes me feel a little better.
Okay.
But you still are involved with,
Yes, I am.
as in the company?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so my point is well taken as well.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Just from the medical standpoint, just for the council is aware that this is the most studied non-lethal device in the history of law enforcement. At this point in time, there's been over 130 different medical studies done on electrical, basically electrical control devices, particularly the taser. And when it comes to heart conditions, pregnancies, all of the issues that you're talking about, we are not, the issue is not with the electrical doing any type of damage. I mean, there have been plenty of medical studies to prove that it will not damage a fetus, it will not damage any type of heart tissue or nerve tissue. What we're concerned with in all of those occasions is the fall, because when you hit someone with a taser, you're basically taking control over their exoskeletal muscles. And we do not want someone who is obviously pregnant to be falling because of those complications. But the electrical energy itself is not the issue at that point. Now, what makes programs work and what really hinders programs in different agencies comes down to some very, very simple tasks. Number one, first of all, is that you have good policy. And I know your chief is looking at the policies from the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the policies of other agencies within your insured trust that are already issuing them. We have some great policies already in Rhode Island. Policy is the number one. Training your people is number two. And oversight of a program is number three. And making sure that your officers know right up front where and when they can use this device. There is no use of force that we have out there, no use of force whatsoever that we use in law enforcement that is 100% safe. I mean, if I take a look and I pick up a pencil is designed to write with. If you get me mad, I can do some serious damage with that pencil. But the actual statistics were done by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department a few years ago, and they looked at different degrees of force in the actual prospect of injury per 1,000 usages. And with a firearm, when the law enforcement officer uses a firearm, 50% of the time the person is going to be killed by that firearm, 50% of the time they're going to be injured. When we're using our batons, 780 out of 1,000 are going to be injured. When you're using kicks and punches, 450 out of the 1,000. All right. Playing collegiate level basketball, out of 1,000 games, you're going to sustain 4 injuries. These are just the facts. Taser devices, you're going to sustain 2 injuries out of 1,000. And almost guaranteed those injuries are going to be from falls. Talking about the different medical studies that have been done, over 80 of the 130 medical studies were done completely independent of Taser International. And this is the synopsis of those medical studies.
We have a copy of that.
Hannibal wants to get it on a Thursday.
I have it on
Monday's
disc, sir. And I did bring a synopsis version, and this is by Dr. Mark Kroll. On our medical advisory board, Dr. Mark Kroll he holds more patents than anyone in the world on implantable heart devices, defibrillators, and pacemakers, and that type of
You
thing.
have a taser with you?
Yes, I do, sir.
I have no idea what they look like.
Listen, I'll vote for it if you tase Don.
This is a taser.
The other way.
It's not
There's no
loaded.
cartridge in it. Basically, what the device does is when the cartridge is placed in the end of it, when the device is turned on, I get both a laser and lighting so the officer can see what he's doing even in darkness. The back side of it has an LED display telling the officer what the percentage of the battery is in place. With this device, this one here has actually a camera on it, so when I turn it on, it's recording an hour and a half of everything that the officer sees and does. Video, audio, low-level infrared. It marks timestamps and date stamps, everything the officer's seeing. So it's no longer the officer said this and the suspect said this. Let's look at the video. All right. Every time that this device is fired, it internally records time, date, and duration of that firing. This is something the officer cannot change. It's there to prevent the allegation of misuse by the officer. And this is something that only the administration of the police department will have access to. There is more accountability built into this device than any other device in law enforcement. Every one of the cartridges is individually serialized. So when it is fired, it kicks out between 40 and 60 very, very small little tags. They look like confetti. Each piece of it has the serial number of that cartridge on it. So the idea is it's the most accountable device out there in its use, allowing, first of all, to protect the officers from the allegation of misuse, but also to have the administration be able to look over every firing that they have to make sure that the devices are being used properly.
Could you give us some information on the, in terms of maintenance, in terms of replacement? Obviously, we're talking about this not coming out of the regular budget, this is coming out of the forfeiture funds, but somewhere down the line, we're going to have to replace them. We're going to have to maintain them. What amounts of money are we looking at? Is it a year down the road? 2 years, 3 years?
Typically, the devices, the duty life for this device is between 5 and 7 years. Obviously, if you're hot swapping them, i.e. not giving them to every officer and having them on the road 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's going to shorten that. This, without the camera on it, the camera itself is a rechargeable device. Without the camera on it, it has a lithium power pack, and it has a 10-year shelf life, and it's good for up to 200 5-second firings. Most, in my agency right now, we probably replace the power magazine maybe every 16, 18 months, issued to an individual officer, and that's $28. The actual cartridges themselves run between $17 and $22. These are all self-contained, each one of these individual serialized, and as far as startup program, it's roughly going to cost the chief approximately $1,000 to put an officer on the street with a device, training cartridges, and deployment cartridges. Recurring costs over the next year are primarily going to be 2 cartridges to fire during training, to requalify with the weapon, to make sure that they're still proficient with what they're doing. So it'll end up costing between $40 and $60 per year to requalify the officer.
But under normal circumstances, we're looking at a life of 5 to 7 years?
5 to 7 years. And one of the things that I always recommend too is they come with a typical 1 year's manufacturer's warranty. If anything happens to it in a year, that's subject to anything to do with the manufacturer, we repair or replace it. All right. We offer basically it's a 4-year extended warranty that it makes it a no questions asked warranty. The best way I describe it to people, it's an LLB warranty. Regardless of whatever happens to this device for 5 years, it's my responsibility, not yours. Because after the first year, if it breaks and it's no longer under warranty, you're looking at probably a $350 bill for a repair. After 2 years, about $450. Where for half the cost, for about $170, $75, the device is risk-free to you for 5 years. So to me, it's one of the best things that we do because it takes all of the risk off the agency for any type of repair and maintenance cost.
Thank
You know, Chief, you handed me this, handed dollars, the following list of the trust member departments that deploy taser. But they're relatively small communities. The communities that are missing are Providence, Cranston, Central Falls, Woonsocket, Westerly, the major cities, where certainly the violence is probably a little more prevalent in those cities. And the communities that are cited are Foster, Coventry, Burrville, New Shoreham, Narragansett. I just counted quickly. The majority are very small communities. So the question is, if these are very good additions, the major cities in the state are not buying.
Well, I think Mr. Keough has an answer to that. That's the trust list. There are also all our surrounding communities, Fall River, New Bedford, Newport, Swansea, Somerset, Westport last week, all have these devices. But Mr. Keough, I know Providence does have them, but this is the trust list that was provided to me by the trust. Most commonly, we're compared to Burrville and Smithfield when we do most of our comparisons.
Most of the large agencies either are self-insured, and that's why they're not represented by the trust, so you have that. But we've been in Newport. Newport's been carrying tasers for almost 7 years.
That's on the list.
Yeah, Providence, North Providence, East Providence, these are all agencies that carry. We currently have 14,000 agencies in North America carrying, and also in 43 different countries.
The cities you mentioned are on the list. I was pointing the ones that I don't see.
Okay.
And they are the larger cities where violence is more predominant.
But Providence is one I mentioned. They do carry tasers.
Cranston, Warwick?
Cranston, yes. Warwick, I believe, are doing an evaluation process right now. When we look at, Connecticut State Police issues about 350 of them. Every every New Hampshire State Police officer, every officer carries one in New Hampshire. Every officer in Pennsylvania carries one. Every major city in the state of Connecticut, with the exception of Hartford, who's doing their pilot program right now, every major city carries them in Connecticut. New Haven, Bridgeport, Waterbury, Danbury, the most violent places in that state.
The other part, I think comparison is to his fund, whether funding is available with other communities also. I think if we're looking at comparison, maybe we need to call the other communities if we're looking at them saying, do you have the funding for it? Is the funding available?
Believe it or not, several agencies do exactly what the chief is doing here. If grant funding isn't available because things like the burn grants have dried up, that type of thing, drug forfeiture money is a very, very common way for agencies to purchase this type of equipment.
But I'm just using by comparison. If we're looking at other communities and saying, well, how come this community doesn't have it? Maybe they don't have the funds to get it. Maybe that's why they don't have it.
Primarily larger cities do platoon them, as I call it, or they give them per shift because they cannot afford to buy 250 of them in Fall River. Or even Newport has them per shift. The idea of, I didn't take this idea lightly. I didn't want to use all the town's funds. The opportunity with the drug account, bringing the best technology we can to Tiverton is what I'm trying to do, and again, keep the town out of harm's way in that respect. So,
If you had look at, honestly, Chief, over the course of a year, and just a normal year, how many times do you think your officers would actually use this device?
I don't think there'd be an average, but the possibility of half a dozen times a year would be a high number. I really do. I think that would be a high number. I know from the other chiefs I have spoken with that have them, there tends to be a spike at the beginning, to be quite honest with you, and then it just levels off to it's that new toy, so to speak.
Like speeding or something?
Not for the first 6 months, no.
I can give you a good example with my agency. I deployed these in 2000. 65-man agency, wasn't an extremely large agency, but in the first week they were used 4 times in the first week. Last year, the entire year, they were used 3 times. What happens is that once these things are on the street with the police officers, the deterrent value is incredible.
That's true.
When it comes out, things stop. My officers, since that point in time, have never used their nightsticks, and the only time they've used pepper spray since that point is when a taser wasn't available.
Chief, I can say I'm less concerned with whether this is a valid tool, because from what I've seen and everything, I have no question that this is a valid tool for the police. I'm more concerned with the financial part of it in terms of if this were something coming straight out of the budget, given the financial times, could you justify adding this tool at this time for this price? I would have a hard time doing that. Given this is coming from the drug forfeiture funds that are primarily set aside for this, I'm less concerned with that, although I guess the question would be, are there any other big needs that you can see coming up? Obviously, you've made the determination this is the best use of those funds given needs looking forward. Are there any other big things coming forward next year that you would be looking either to get from the drug forfeiture funds, the remainders of them, or from other monies?
Pie in the sky, I have always had my eye on putting a 200 square foot addition on the building. As a matter of fact, the architect's plans are Mr. Gareth Ames' office. I don't have, the air conditioning is, and the boiler's in, the windows have all been replaced. We have technological, we got a $250,000 grant from Kennedy's office. Technology-wise, we're well-equipped. We have new firearms, cars are good, all our shotguns are new, our radios are new, we have new, all our computers have been updated and replaced continually, all our furniture is new. We're in pretty good shape over there. We really are. The parking lot is, I think this is probably at the top of the list right now, short of the addition.
Thanks.
The policy you have in place here, often discharging the device. If a supervisor is not present, request a response of a supervisor.
Pardon, sir?
Well, the first statement here, if a supervisor is not present, request a response of a supervisor. So you're telling me that we're gonna do this as a deterrent, and the guy's gotta call the supervisor before he uses one? If there's not one present?
If the situation allowed, I would say that would be applicable. If you had someone who's held up in a residence and was threatening to harm himself, you didn't have an immediate threat where you had to react, you could utilize it, but if the situation was, it's always good, two heads are better than one.
Once in custody, police will transport the person to the nearest Rhode Island hospital emergency room, which means we have to take him to Newport.
I think common sense would dictate there, and the policy will reflect upon it. If there are other injuries, life-threatening injuries, that person would be transported to the closest hospital. The reason I say...
That's not what your policy says. The point is, you give us this policy, and this to me is what we're going to be buying a taser and using under this policy. And the policy says he has to be taken to the nearest Rhode Island hospital emergency. Tiverton Fire Department rescue personnel will transport if injuries are serious.
Correct. We're going to use a state protocol.
Which means he's got to go to Newport.
If that person is under arrest, if we take the person to Fall River, we can no longer have jurisdiction. If that person is drunk driving, for example, and it's obvious drunk driving arrest, and he has a serious injury, we're not going to file a protocol. We're going to use a summons process and get that person to the closest medical facility.
Thought it wasn't supposed to be used against the driver.
Well, I'm just giving, I'm making a comparison of a...
Because you give us a policy here, and one of the times they're not supposed to use it is against a motorist.
I didn't say a motorist. I'm giving you an example of a point of law where you would transport a person who sustained an injury to the closest medical facility. Obviously, we're not going to use one on a person who's behind the wheel of a car. What I'm saying to you is if this person, I'm comparing 2 points of law where I would take a person involved in a crash to Fall River and basically give up jurisdiction and use a summons process to bring him, or a warrant process to bring him before the courts, rather than risk his life.
Could I only say what I had intended to do tonight? I want to let everybody have a chance. But my intent was to make a motion to grant the request, subject to the close review and rewrite of these general orders. You can see my notes. Those questions shouldn't be in that order. So I would say that, subject to the approval of new general orders by the town administrator, my motion will be to approve the request.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion, any further questions? All those in favor of the motion, Mr. Costa, raise your right hand. All those opposed, Mr. Costa? 5-2.
Thank you very much for your consideration. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Town Administrator. Next item.
That would be the discussion on economic development.
Yes.
I have met with Len Schmidt from the Economic Development Commission, and we will be meeting again after their 9/11 meeting. We're trying to formulate plans, an approach, and we will be presenting this to the council when these are completed.
And when do you see that occurring, Mr. Gunslow?
I'll have more information for the next meeting after I see what they've accomplished at this week's meeting.
I must say, the minutes we're getting on the Economic Development Commission are really very good, so Kate is to be commended for sort of keeping us all informed. Okay, thank you very much. Financial, new business, bids. How about announcements, comments, and questions? From the administrator.
To keep the council informed, I have appointed 2 EMA deputies. One of them is Fred Almeida, and the other one is William Tavares. Along the lines of emergency management, we are looking for volunteers to become shelter assistants, and anyone who is interested should contact the EMA director at 625-6707. not yesterday, I'm sorry, on Friday, there was a code red test performed in anticipation of an impending hurricane. And out of the 6,000 households, about 3,800 of them, I believe, were in fact contacted. And what you should have received is you should have received a message from the police chief indicating the impending situation. We will be looking into why more of these have not been, more people were not contacted.
We're gonna have a problem with that system, Jim, because when we had road closures for the funeral of the firemen, I was notified through that system. I believe it was the same system. I got no notification of the second one, so it's not.
Let's take
it's
a
not getting
poll
every
as to
time.
how many council members, just taking that, got notified. 1, 2. Nope. Hannibal, did you?
How many got notified with the street closures when the fireman was killed on duty?
1, 2, 3.
For the
For the funeral.
That's why we're going to be looking into it. There wasn't, as I indicated, out of some 6,000, there was less than 4,000 calls that actually went through.
Is there a way anyone can call to have their number placed onto that, just in case? Is there any way?
Well, it's supposed to be, the database is supposed to be comprised of all listed telephone numbers, not cell phones, and not unpublished numbers.
So
Okay.
leave a message if in fact the person isn't there.
Yeah.
It will leave a message if
on
you-
the answering machine.
Right.
Because that's where I got my message the first time, and nothing on
Looking
the,
on the caller ID, it's kind of like the bizarre.
It showed it, well, it showed up as a block caller.
No, see, on mine it was 999-911-999.
Let me ask, how many people in the audience who live in Tiverton got notified about the impending storm? And how many folks did not? Well, but even.
I don't know, I went to the bookstore, they
You have a listed number. You never call it anyways, right?
I had to depend on the fire chief, who's the EMA director, by the way.
Thanks, Bob, you covered me again.
Threw you right down the stairs while you got all the rotten things he said.
But he promised me a taser. Well, that was to tase you.
31.
Okay, let's move on here.
Regarding Code Red, if you have a question, I initiated the call at 4:42 PM. All the calls, there were 6,252 calls made, and that was completed at 6:49. And we actually made 3,800 connections, which is only 61% roughly of the population. I did put a call into them today. I didn't get the return call, but they've been very good as far as returning calls, and I'll find out why, and I'll get back to the council why this discrepancy exists. That's a lot, 40%. Does not call cell phones. Many people are giving up their house phone for a cell phone. It does not work with the cell phone. Also, if you have a private number, you have to register. So, unless there's that, I don't think there's that many people who have non-published numbers.
It did call a cell phone.
It did.
Called mine.
Do you have a landline?
You have it forwarded? Yeah, you might have it forwarded.
No, I've got 2 landlines at my house and I have a cell phone. And both of my phones started ringing at my house and my cell phone started ringing at the same time.
Interesting.
And both
I will-
started going, and I answered my cell phone, and it was your voice, and then we had the message on one going,
That's
and the
enough.
kids were answering the other one, and we started laughing, and I'm like, they're testing the system. When they were doing Jerry's call also, I had the same thing. It rang all 3. I had it on all 3 messages, so I'm getting it on my cell phone also.
Interesting. I will give the council a written report
Yes,
about
because some
that.
of us have regular phones with answering service.
And it didn't get it. I will find out.
Okay, Chief, thank you for it. Jim, keep going.
Yesterday, I attended a meeting at Holy Trinity Church where the town's recreation committee received a donation from the Central Baptist Church for the purchase of 2 new scoreboards for the front of the town farm, 4 bleachers at the front of the town farm, and it was a very nice gesture on the part of Central Baptist, and I would like to publicly thank them for their donation. September the 14th, at St. Christopher's Church, the annual meeting for the Friends of the Library will be held. At 5:30 p.m. there will be refreshments, and there will be a presentation at 6 p.m. And the presentation will be the role of the library in Tiverton's economic development. And that will be presented by Keith Stokes from the Newport Chamber of Commerce. The Treasurer's Office. The software is finally installed. The debugging process continues, and we are in the throes of developing reports. There's been some delay in some of the activity because of the transformation of the data from the old system to the new system and the debugging process. But we're working on that, and the reports should start to fly soon. Tomorrow is primary day. For those people that don't know, we urge all of the voters to get out and vote. I'm sorry?
And independents. Democrats and
Okay.
independents.
Okay.
Republican primary.
All right, Democrats and independents. I stand corrected. That's all I have.
The polling place there.
Jim, can I just ask the polling places are the usual, all 5, I believe. Nancy Mello,
Yes,
the polling places are the usual polling places?
there are 5 polling places.
Nancy's,
There are 5 polling places for
You're not
primary.
using the microphone.
The East Tiverton Fire Station. I'm
One.
sorry, I call it East Tiverton, it's on Crandall, I'm sorry, Crandall Road Fire Station, the high school, Country View Estates, Town Hall, and the North Tiverton Fire Station. We're hoping by next year we'll have some schools that will be able to utilize, because these aren't the best of locations. That's what we have.
Jim, I want to come back to something that you said about the treasurer's reports. We have never received a year-end treasurer's report. The council.
Right. All
Is that
right.
because of the software?
That's because of the time that it's taking to convert and complete the year-end adjustments all at the same time.
When we do get the new treasurer's report with the new imprimatur of the software, how will it look?
Just a little bit better than the one that you got.
You look forward to it.
I do too.
And when do you see that occurring?
I see that occurring sometime this month. In addition to that, the audit has begun of the records. So, just to keep you informed, that the audit is in process.
We're going to be complete.
Thank you.
December 31st, 2008.
Now, yes.
Or sooner.
Nancy has brought to my attention that our next meeting is going to be on the 22nd, and then we are going to have a little over 3 weeks before our next meeting, which will be, I think, on October 14th, if I'm not mistaken. So Nancy has requested that the council consider having a special meeting workshop on October 6th, Monday, October 6th. So just, if everyone just kind of keep that date open, because she anticipates having to get caught up on some stuff with minutes, and so she's just asked that we kind of keep that, because that's actually one of our 3-week spreads there. So she's asked that everyone kind of keep that date open for a special workshop, a workshop special meeting.
we can talk about it more at our next meeting on the 22nd.
Okay? Anything else from the council before we move on to the solicitor? Solicitor, you're up.
Thank you. Making a
And
note.
would you talk into the microphone as well?
Sorry, just making a note of that shift to October 6th, which I appreciate, because I noticed normally the fifth Monday would be the week before, which is the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, so I will hold October 6th also. Couple of things, I provided to the council a copy of our response, the town's response to the Attorney General's Department, to the open meeting complaint that was received. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to discuss it. Otherwise, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And it's obviously a public document in and of itself. As of its filing with the department, we have not heard anything from the Attorney General's office since then. Also, this is under me, I guess, because they're dealing with ordinances. The council has been, I think, actually had voted on a couple of these as far as going forward to public hearings. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone was okay, specifically for the October 14th date, the Juvenile Hearing Board, the Historic Preservation Advisory Board, and the Building Code Board of Appeals. Now, you haven't actually seen the draft ordinance yet of the Building Code Board of Appeals, but we wanted to get your permission to in order to make it on the 14th, we've got to advertise it before your next council meeting. You'll have a draft at your next council meeting, so you'll have a couple of weeks to review it before the public hearing, and if you want to postpone it and not act on it, you can, but if you want to have the opportunity to do it on the 14th, we need to go ahead with the advertising ahead of time because of the time period.
Motion to advertise the 3 for the 14th, if they haven't been advertised.
Second.
Any further discussion of the motion by Mr. Boland? All those in favor of that motion, raise your right hand, please. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we are up to the point of our executive session.
Motion to enter into executive session 42-46-5A2 litigation.
Second.
All those in favor of that motion, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
You've been talking a whole lot tonight.
No, actually.